Hey, I'm Evan. I'm 24 and still making my way through college. I've always been the kind of guy who keeps a low profile. Never the loudmouth in class. Never the guy cracking jokes or grabbing the spotlight. I'm more of an observer. I take things in quietly. I notice stuff others miss. I grew up in a small, quiet town just outside Milwaukee. Nothing much ever goes down around here, which is probably why what I'm about to tell you still feels unreal, even to me. I've never been one to cause trouble. I usually play it safe, stick to the rules. At least, that was true until the afternoon I rang my buddy's doorbell, and things started heading in a direction I didn't see coming. Tyler's been one of my closest friends since freshman year. We clicked right away, like we'd known each other forever. He's the life of the party. Always ready with a joke, always pulling people in with that easy charm. We worked on class projects together, chilled on weekends, gamed a lot, just regular college guy stuff. I'd been over to his house more times than I could count. Felt like a second home, honestly. That day, we were supposed to meet up to finish a business presentation for one of our classes. He texted me earlier to say he might be a little late, had to wrap up a work shift, but told me to head over anyway. Said his mom would be home. I'd seen Claire, his mom, a few times before. She had this laid-back energy, real easy to be around. The kind of mom who made killer coffee, wore vintage band shirts, and actually treated her kids' friends like real people. She was in her early 40s, but you wouldn't know it at a glance. She had that ageless kind of beauty. Soft features, sharp, alert eyes, and a smile that instantly made you feel at ease. I pulled into their driveway around 4 in the afternoon. Sun was still up, breeze was light. Just one of those peaceful, ordinary days. I walked up and rang the doorbell, thinking Tyler would be the one to greet me. But it wasn't him. Claire opened the door. She was wearing just an oversized white t-shirt that barely covered her thighs. No makeup, hair casually tossed up, barefoot. Looked like she'd just woken up from a nap, or maybe finished cleaning. I paused for a second, not because anything seemed off. Actually, it was the opposite. She looked incredible, and it didn't even seem like she tried. She tilted her head and smiled, totally casual. "Oh, it's you," she said. "Come in. I'm alone." I don't know why those words landed so hard. She wasn't being flirty. It didn't sound that way at all. But still, the words stuck. I'm alone. I stepped in, pretending like it was no big deal, but I couldn't help noticing how the sunlight streamed into the living room, how it lit her up as she walked in front of me. That t-shirt rode just above her thighs, and my brain was yelling at me not to look. But I looked, just for a second. In the kitchen, she turned toward me. "Tyler's running late. I think he mentioned you'd be stopping by," she said. "Want something to drink? Coffee? Iced tea?" "Iced tea sounds good," I answered, hoping my voice didn't give away anything. She moved around the kitchen like it was second nature. Opened the fridge, grabbed the pitcher, poured a glass. All smooth, no effort. I took a seat at the kitchen island, drumming my fingers against the counter, doing my best not to stare. But my eyes drifted anyway. Her legs, the way her shirt slid off one shoulder. It didn't feel like she was trying to get attention. Maybe that's what made it harder to ignore. She handed me the glass and sat across from me. "So," she said, "how's school treating you?" I told her a little about the project Tyler and I were buried under, how we were stressed about grades, deadlines, internships, the usual college stress. She listened closely, sipping her drink, nodding as I talked. After a short pause, she looked at me and said, "You know, out of all the friends Tyler brings over, you're one of the few who seems grounded. You're calm." I like that. I wasn't exactly sure how to respond, so I just smiled and said, "Thanks. I try." We sat there for a while in silence, not the awkward kind, just a quiet moment that felt full, like something was hanging in the air that neither of us dared to name. Then she let out a soft laugh. "Sorry," she said, tugging gently at the bottom of her shirt. "I probably look like a total mess right now. I just threw this on." I let out a nervous laugh of my own. "You look fine. I mean, actually, you look great. I mean." She laughed again, light and teasing. "Relax, Evan. I'm messing with you." I felt my face heat up, definitely blushing. But the moment passed easily. We ended up talking for nearly 40 minutes, just the two of us. The conversation bounced from music to books to all the dumb stuff Tyler used to do as a kid. At some point, I stopped thinking of her as Tyler's mom. It wasn't flirty and it wasn't about attraction. It just felt real, like we were two people who understood each other. Eventually, Tyler texted, said he'd be at least another hour. I looked over at her. Should I come back when he gets back? She hesitated for half a second, then shook her head. Nah, you're already here. Unless you've got somewhere else to be. I gave a small shrug. Nope. I'm free. She smiled again, that easy, warm kind of smile that somehow made everything feel simple. Then stay. I've got some old movies we could put on if you're up for it, she said. Just to pass the time. We headed into the living room and she picked out an old black and white film I'd never seen. She took one side of the couch, I took the other. For the most part, we just watched in silence. But every now and then I'd catch her glancing over at me. And once or twice I looked back. Nothing happened, not that day. Still, something felt different. Like a shift in the air, subtle but real. It was as if a quiet line had been drawn between us, one neither of us dared cross, but both of us recognized was there. I didn't expect to want to go back so soon. But after that visit, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The way she looked at me. The softness in her voice. That smile. And that one moment during the movie, our eyes met, just for a second, but it stuck with me way longer than I wanted to admit. Of course, I never breathed a word of it to Tyler. I mean, how could I? There was no way he'd understand. Honestly, I barely understood it myself. A few days later, Tyler hit me up again. Same setup, he had stuff to do with his dad and wouldn't be around. He told me I could swing by and grab a flash drive we needed for our class project. I hesitated for a second, but before I knew it, I was already halfway there. I pulled into their driveway and sat there for a minute, just staring at the front door. Part of me hoped she wouldn't be home. The other part? Kind of hoped she would be. I got out and knocked. She opened the door again, this time in jeans and a hoodie. Her hair was down and she was barefoot again. Still had that same relaxed, welcoming smile. Evan, she said, like she was genuinely happy to see me. Twice in 1 week. Tyler's not here, though. Yeah, I know, I said. He told me to swing by and pick up a flash drive. She stepped aside and opened the door wider for me to come in. It's probably sitting on the counter, she said. Want something to drink while you're here? I hesitated for a second. Sure. We made our way back into the kitchen. The light was soft, warm, and the air had that same sweet, familiar scent from before, something like vanilla, maybe a hint of cinnamon. She didn't act like she owned the space, but somehow it still felt like every inch of it belonged to her. Effortless. She grabbed 2 glasses, filled them with water, then leaned back against the counter, arms folded across her chest. So, how's the project coming along, she asked. I gave a half shrug. Honestly? It's kind of a mess. Tyler's been scattered and I've had trouble focusing. We're pretty behind. She smirked knowingly. College life, she said. I remember those days. Late nights, living on caffeine, always behind on something. I chuckled. Yeah, that sounds about right. Then her expression shifted, turned softer, more reflective. You ever feel like people expect you to have it all figured out already? She asked. All the time, I said, caught off guard by how real that question felt coming from her. My parents think I'm wasting my time with business classes, I admitted. They wanted me to choose something more stable. But I don't even know what that means anymore. Stable how? Like, emotionally? Financially? It's all a blur. She nodded slowly like she got it on a deeper level. My dad was the same way, she said. Everything had to be by the book. Follow the plan. Stay in line. There was never any room to just breathe. The room went quiet after that, not in a bad way, just heavy with meaning. Like we both understood something unspoken. Like we were sitting in the same feeling. And then she looked at me differently. Not as some kid from college. Not even as her son's friend. Just as someone who'd walked a road not too different from hers. You know, she said after a moment, it's really nice talking to someone who actually listens. I could say the same, I replied, meaning every word. We ended up back in the living room without even needing to say it aloud. It was like we both knew we weren't ready for the conversation to end. She sat at the far end of the couch again, same as last time. I took my usual spot too, but this time she curled her legs up on the cushion and turned slightly toward me. She seemed more at ease now. Maybe even a little vulnerable in a quiet sort of way. She grabbed the remote and started flipping through the channels. Another classic? I asked. You into all these black and white movies? She smiled at that. They remind me of simpler times. Quieter days? I asked. Yeah, she said. Back when people actually talked to each other. You don't think people talk anymore? She looked straight at me and held my gaze for a second. Not really, she said, her voice calm but sure. Not like this. We didn't speak for a while after that. Just sat there quietly, the light from the TV dancing across the room. Then, out of nowhere, she reached behind her and pulled a throw blanket off the back of the couch. Without much thought, she tossed it gently onto my lap. You looked cold, she said casually, like it was nothing. Truth was, I wasn't cold. But I didn't move the blanket either. I left it right where she placed it. And then, she did something unexpected. She leaned over and adjusted it just slightly, but her fingers brushed against my knee as she did. It wasn't clumsy. It wasn't the kind of accidental touch you explain away. It was small. Deliberate. Just a brief moment of contact, but it sent a jolt straight through me. I turned to look at her and found she was already watching me. Her expression had changed. There was no teasing this time, no playful smile. Just something open. Something sincere. I cleared my throat, unsure how to start. Claire, do you ever feel like... She didn't let me finish. Her hand reached over and rested on mine. Gentle. Slow. Intentional. I know what you're about to ask, she whispered, her voice barely above the hum of the TV. And? I don't know. Silence followed, heavy, stretched out like time had slowed down just for that moment. I'm not trying to make this complicated, I said quietly. I know you're not, she replied, just as soft. Then she let go of my hand. Carefully. Slowly. Like she didn't want to, but knew she had to. She stood up, smoothing her hoodie. I should get back to my laundry, she said, giving the faintest smile. But... I'm really glad you came by. I stood too, unsure of what had just happened, unsure if anything had actually happened at all. But something had changed. That much was clear. You could feel it thick in the air. Like that stillness right before a summer thunderstorm when everything goes quiet, waiting. She walked me to the front door and opened it. I paused, trying to come up with something that felt meaningful, something that fit the weight of the moment. But all I managed was, thanks for the drink. She gave me a small smile, the kind that holds more than it says. Anytime, Evan. I stepped outside and the door clicked shut behind me, soft, but final. Walking back to my car, I knew something had started. Something I hadn't planned for. Something I didn't understand yet. And the truth? I didn't want it to stop. I didn't see Claire again for about a week. I tried to push it all out of my head, tried to act like nothing had happened. Like nothing had almost happened on that couch. But it kept replaying. That quiet way she touched my hand. The look she gave me. The way she said, I know what you're about to say. That wasn't nothing. That wasn't just in my imagination. Still, I kept telling myself to let it go. To be smart. She was Tyler's mom. She was older. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. And honestly, that should have been the end of it. But it didn't end there. Tyler called me on Thursday night. Said he was heading down to Chicago for the weekend to visit his dad and wouldn't be around. He asked if I could stop by and grab a folder from his room. More materials for our class project. It was getting late, probably close to 8. I hesitated for a second. Then said, yeah, sure. When I pulled into the driveway, my headlights cut through the fading blue of dusk. The house looked warm and lived in from the outside. The porch light was glowing. And for some reason, something in my chest tightened as I walked up to the front door. I knocked. Claire answered, barefoot again, wearing a long white t-shirt similar to the one from last time. Maybe not the exact same, but close enough that it stood out. Her hair was down and still a little damp, like she just stepped out of the shower. She looked at me for a moment, not shocked but definitely aware. Oh, she said quietly. It's you. Tyler asked me to pick up a folder from his room, I said. She stepped to the side, holding the door open wider. Come in, she said. I'm alone. Same words as before. But this time they felt different. I stepped inside. The air smelled fresh, like clean soap and something warm, maybe candles. The house was still. No music, no TV. Just the low hum of the fridge. He's out of town, huh? She asked as I started toward the stairs. Yeah, Chicago. I paused halfway up and glanced back. She was still standing near the door, watching me. You want something before you go? She asked. Water? Or wine? I almost said no. Almost. But instead, I heard myself say, wine sounds good. She nodded and headed into the kitchen. I followed. She poured 2 glasses of red, then leaned back casually against the counter, sipping slowly. I took mine and stood across from her. We started talking, nothing deep. Just music, random memories, small stuff. She mentioned how quiet the house felt whenever Tyler was gone. I complained about how much I hated school deadlines. She laughed. We kept drinking slow and steady. Then it got quiet again. But not awkward. Just still. She set her glass down and looked over at me. Her face shifted. Something in her eyes changed. "Evan," she said, "can I ask you something?" "Yeah," I replied. "Why'd you really come over?" I blinked. "For Tyler." She stopped me gently, shaking her head. "No. I mean, why you? You could have told him to email the file. Or waited until he got back. But you came here." I didn't say anything. I couldn't pretend. Not when she was looking at me like that. Then she stepped toward me. One slow step. Then another. "I've been thinking about you," she said, her voice low and steady. "Since that last time." She paused, eyes holding mine. "I know it's wrong. I know I shouldn't, but I can't stop." I swallowed hard. My heart was pounding in my chest. "I've been thinking about you too," I admitted. We were standing there, face to face. The kitchen light flickered slightly above us, barely noticeable, but somehow it made the moment feel even more real. Then she reached up and gently placed her hand on my chest. I didn't move. "You're so young," she whispered. "I know. You're Tyler's friend. I know. I'm not supposed to want this. I know." She leaned in slowly, giving me every chance to step back, to stop it from happening. But I didn't. Our lips met. Soft at first, like we were both feeling out the moment. Then again, deeper this time. Her hands slid up to my neck, then around my back. Mine found her waist. The kiss was long and warm, full of all the words we hadn't dared to say. All the tension. All the silence. All the wondering. When we finally pulled away, we just stood there, breathing. Quiet. Still. Then she turned and covered her face with one hand. "This can't happen," she said softly. "We can't do this again." "I know," I replied. "I'm sorry." "I'm not," she said, turning to face me again. "I'm not sorry it happened. But we do have to be careful." I nodded. "Yeah, I get it." She walked into the living room and sat down on the couch. I followed her. We didn't kiss again that night. Didn't go any further than what already happened. We just sat there fully clothed, side by side. Our legs touching under the blanket. The TV was on, but neither of us was really watching it. Eventually, it got late. I stood up. "I should probably get going," I said. She walked me to the door, just like before. But this time, right before I stepped outside, she leaned in close and whispered, "If you come back, come alone." I gave a small nod and then the door closed behind me. I didn't tell a soul. Not Tyler. Not any of my friends. If I'm being honest, not even myself. I didn't speak the kiss into existence. I didn't try to explain it or label it. I just carried it with me. Like a quiet secret I wasn't meant to hold, but couldn't let go of either. The next time I saw Claire, it wasn't something I had planned. It was a lazy Sunday afternoon. Tyler was still out of town. I was driving back from campus, tired and not really thinking. And before I realized it, I had turned onto their street. No call. No message. Just instinct. I pulled into the driveway, walked up to the door, and knocked. She opened it like she'd been expecting me. Not surprised. More like she'd known this moment was bound to come eventually. Same long t-shirt. Barefoot again. And those eyes, part unsure, part quietly aching. We didn't say a word. She stepped aside. I walked in. Something shifted that day, something subtle but undeniable. We never made any promises. We didn't call it anything. It wasn't love, at least not in the way the movies try to sell it. But it was real. Real in that quiet, slow-burning way that hides in sideways glances. In fingertips brushing by chance. In words we chose not to say. Over the next month, I kept finding reasons to swing by whenever Tyler wasn't around. Sometimes Claire would send a text. Other times I just showed up. And somehow she was always there. Waiting. Like whatever silence we shared had never ended. We never rushed things. It wasn't about excitement or urgency. It was about those calm, unspoken afternoons on the couch. I'd sit down, and she'd settle in beside me. Her leg would touch mine under the blanket, casual but deliberate. She'd hand me a cup of coffee that somehow tasted sweeter just because it came from her. Sometimes, she'd lean into me during the movie, rest her head on my shoulder like it was the most natural thing in the world. She'd laugh at my dumb comments about school or some random story about my professors. And sometimes, we'd kiss. Soft, simple kisses. The kind that didn't need to lead anywhere. They just existed. In the kitchen. In the hallway. One time on the back porch while the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. But through it all, we never gave it a label. Because putting it into words, that would have made it too real. And real meant danger. Too much risk. There's one night that stayed with me more than the rest. She had music playing, something slow, something that felt like it belonged to another decade. She was wearing this loose sweatshirt, sleeves pulled down past her hands. We were sitting close, shoulders touching, and I started talking. Told her how I didn't want to follow the path my dad expected. How construction just wasn't for me, even if that's what he always pushed for. She didn't interrupt, just listened. Her eyes locked on mine like she was holding on to every word. Then she said, "You make me feel like I'm still more than just somebody's mom." That hit me harder than I expected. "You are," I told her. "You're so much more than that." We kissed again. Slower. Deeper. Her hands came up to my face, holding me like she needed to feel something solid. And I let her because I needed it too. But even in the warmth of that moment, I could feel something else rising just beneath the surface. That edge. The one we'd been skirting around for weeks. Every touch reminded us we were getting closer to a line that wasn't going to stay invisible forever. And we never mentioned Tyler. Not once. That was the one rule between us. Unspoken but solid. That space we shared? Tyler was never a part of it. He didn't exist in those moments. Then one afternoon I found myself watching Claire as she made tea. And something hit me, something I hadn't fully let myself feel until that second. I didn't want this to end. But deep down I knew it had to. What we had was never built to last. Every glance, every touch, every quiet laugh between us, it was all borrowed time. A slow gamble we kept playing, knowing the odds. And then one day she turned toward me with a different look in her eyes. A little heavier. A little more final. "You know this can't keep going, right?" she said. I nodded. "Yeah, I know. I don't want anyone to get hurt," she said softly. "Especially not Tyler." "I get it," I said. "We've already crossed too many lines. But I don't regret it." She looked at me, her eyes warm and tired. "Neither do I." Then silence again. Not cold. Just full. Like we both understood something that didn't need to be said out loud. That week we saw each other twice. Both times felt different, slower, more careful. Like the kind of goodbye that doesn't speak its name. We kissed, but slower. Held each other a little longer. Smiled with something gentler behind it. And then, the last time I left her house, she didn't walk me to the door. She stayed curled up on the couch, blanket over her shoulders, legs tucked beneath her. Her voice was soft when she spoke. "You're going to do something good with your life, Evan," she said. "I know you will." I stood there, caught between staying and leaving. Then she added, "And this, whatever it was, it mattered to me." I nodded. It mattered to me too. I opened the door myself, stepped outside, and gently closed it behind me. That was the last time I was ever in her house alone. After that, everything just went still. No more messages. No surprise drop-ins. No long afternoons on the couch or soft conversations over coffee. I kept hoping, just once, she might reach out. Even something small, like "Hope you're doing okay." But she never did. And neither did I. I kept my head down and buried myself in school. Finals were coming fast, and I let that be my excuse to move forward. Tyler came back from Chicago, and just like that, everything snapped back to normal. Like nothing had ever happened. Like I hadn't spent a month living inside this secret life just down the hall from where he slept. It was surreal. I'd sit beside him, working on group assignments, pretending I wasn't replaying every quiet step I'd taken through that hallway. Pretending I didn't know what it felt like to be wanted in that same living room, just feet away. Claire faded into the background. If she was around, I didn't see her. Occasionally, I'd catch the sound of her voice upstairs or catch a passing glimpse of her moving through a doorway. But no glances. No eye contact. Nothing. Just space. And in that space, we no longer existed. And I understood. That chapter had closed. What we shared, however short-lived, was fragile. Temporary. Trying to stretch it any further would have only ruined whatever quiet truth we had left. She had her life. A son. A home. And me? I was just a college kid, stuck between being too young to know anything and old enough to know that I didn't have it all figured out. As much as we'd needed each other in that brief moment in time, we both knew exactly where the road ended. Still, the silence left a mark. A week passed. Then another. One Saturday afternoon, I stopped by Tyler's place to grab a notebook I'd left behind. He was at the gym and told me to just let myself in. The door, like always, was unlocked. The house was quiet. I walked through the hallway, and just as I reached the counter to grab the notebook, I heard her voice from behind. Evan. I turned. She was standing at the bottom of the stairs. Hair tied back. No makeup. Hoodie and leggings. She looked tired, but gentle. Hey, I said, my voice softer than I meant it to be. She gave a small nod. Have you been? Busy, I said. You. The same. Then came that familiar pause. That silence we'd learned to sit with. Only this time, it didn't feel heavy. It felt honest. I wasn't sure I'd ever see you again, she said quietly. I didn't think I would either, I replied. She walked over slowly and leaned against the counter across from where I stood. Her arms folded, her eyes shifting down, then back up to meet mine. I've thought about what happened. A lot, she said. Me too. I just want you to know. I'm not ashamed of it. And I don't regret it. I nodded. Neither do I. We needed something, she said, her voice almost a whisper. Even if we didn't realize it at the time. I looked at her and said, I'm glad it was you. She smiled softly. I'm glad it was you too. We stood there, just a few feet apart, and yet it felt like we were saying everything without needing to say much at all. I'm not the kind of person who does things like that, she said. And it scared me how natural it felt with you. It felt easy, I said. Because it was right. For what it was. She gave a small nod. Yeah, it was. Another pause followed, but this one felt calm. Still. Like peace settling in after a storm. Tyler doesn't know, she added. And he never will. That matters to me. I'd never tell him, I said. Not ever. I know. She stepped forward, reached out, and gently placed her hand over mine. Just for a second. A final gesture. A silent thank you. Take care of yourself, Evan. You too, Claire. And that was it. She stepped back. I picked up my notebook and walked toward the door. I didn't look back. When I got in the car and turned the key, I didn't feel crushed or heartbroken. I felt settled. Whatever this thing had been between us, it ended the only way it ever could. At the right time. In the right way. No chaos. No desperate goodbyes in the rain. No drama. Just something rare. Something real. Something untouched by the noise of the world. Tucked away quietly in time where nothing could spoil it. It never happened again. We never spoke of it. Never brought it up. But sometimes when I drive past her street or hear one of those old songs she liked, I think back on those days. And I smile. Because I knew her. The real her. And for a little while, she knew me too.